The IT support team told me that if I wanted access to multiple archive folders, I had to submit a separate request for every single subfolder. So that's exactly what I did. I work as a power electronics repair technician for a company that has been building rugged industrial equipment for decades. Many of the products I repair are still operating long after they were discontinued. Some units fail only a few months after installation, while others come back after running continuously for nearly 20 years. One day, an old discontinued unit landed on my repair bench. To diagnose the fault properly, I needed the original circuit diagrams, engineering notes, and testing procedures. Those documents weren't confidential anymore. They belonged to a product that had been retired years before. Unfortunately, after our company was purchased by a large international corporation, all of our local IT services were replaced by a centralized global help desk that followed strict policies for every request, no matter how old the files were. The documentation was stored inside a legacy archive buried deep within the company's server structure. None of the local engineers had direct access anymore. Only a few longtime employees remembered where everything was located, but even they couldn't open the folders themselves. I submitted an access request and waited. A full week later, I finally received a response. According to the help desk, they had approved access to one folder, but it wasn't even the folder I needed. Even worse, I could only see the folder itself. Every subfolder inside remained locked. In other words, I could look at the names of the files, but couldn't actually open any of them. I replied as professionally as possible and explained that I needed access to the complete archive because I had no way of knowing which specific folder contained the documentation I was searching for. The answer came back quickly. Their policy required an individual support ticket for every single folder that needed permission. I read the email twice just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. Then I opened the archive directory and started counting. The first product family alone contained more than a dozen separate folders. I copied the same request again and again, changing only the folder path before submitting each ticket. When I realized every product family used the same folder structure, I simply continued. One request, then another, and another. Hundreds of them. I eventually closed my email program because every ticket generated multiple automated notifications, and I didn't want my inbox exploding while I was still submitting requests. About an hour later, my manager walked over with an expression that immediately told me something interesting had happened. The global IT department had called him. Apparently, several hundred new support tickets from a single employee had completely overwhelmed their reporting dashboard. Their performance metrics were suddenly filled with hundreds of open requests, and someone urgently wanted to know why. That's when they discovered something surprising. The original support representative had given me incorrect instructions. One properly submitted request could have granted access to the entire archive from the beginning. That information somehow became available only after their system was flooded with hundreds of perfectly valid tickets. Within the next hour, my permissions were updated correctly. This time, I received access to every required folder and all of the subdirectories beneath them. After waiting more than 2 weeks, I finally downloaded the documentation I needed and identified the faulty component before the workday ended. Later, my manager gently suggested that creating hundreds of support tickets probably wasn't something I should repeat in the future. I simply reminded him that I had followed the written instructions exactly as they had been given to me. He couldn't really argue with that. He just sighed and walked away. No one apologized for the weeks lost because of the unnecessary delays, but something did change afterward. The next time I requested access to that archive, the approval arrived almost immediately. It's amazing how quickly a process improves after a few hundred support tickets expose the flaw in the system.